morning and welcome to Rising. We've got a terrific show for you today, complete with a number of excellent guests, including my former co-host Ryan Grimm is stopping by to talk about his new media venture. We're also going to be checking in on the NATO summit here in Washington, D.C. Good to see you, Jessica. Thanks for joining.
It is good to be back with you, Robbie.
All right, let's dive right into our top story. Of course, President Joe Biden. Now, the White House released a letter from Biden's doctor on Monday night, hours after the press briefing turned contentious regarding his health. Now, with permission from the White House, Biden's physician, Kevin O'Connor, wrote that the president has not seen a neurologist outside of his annual physical, and he cleared Biden of any neurological disorders, including stroke and Parkinson's disease. But now the New York Post and New York Times first reported details from the visitor's log at the White House, which shows that Parkinson's specialist Dr. Kevin Kennard visited the White House 8 times from last summer to this spring and met with the president's personal doctor at least once.
White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre was grilled as the press corps repeatedly Monday afternoon asked her whether Kennard was there for Biden. Let's take a look.
That is what the specialist said. I just want to take a step back for a second, because I do take offense to what Ed alluded to. You know, come out here every day, there's a press briefing, and we do our best to give you the information that we have at the time. That's what we do. And we understand that the freedom of the press, we respect the freedom of the press. You heard me talk about this last week. I appreciate the back and forth that we all have. I try to respect you, and I hope you try to respect me. And we literally do everything that we can. My team does everything that we can to make sure we get the answers to you. That's what we do. And sometimes we disagree. Sometimes we are not in agreement. But you know what? That's democracy. That is what is important, to have that healthy back and forth. And so to say that I'm holding information or allude to anything else is not unfair. It's really, really unfair. I think people who are watching and have been watching this briefing for this past week could say that we are doing our best in this briefing to provide the information that we have. And I will admit, I will be the first one to admit, sometimes I get it wrong. At least I admit that. At least I admit that. And sometimes I don't have the information. And I will always, always admit that. But I do take offense to what was just happening at the beginning of this briefing. It's not okay. Go ahead.
But Karine Jean-Pierre did not give a straight answer on the Parkinson's question. Here to dive deeper is Hill congressional staff writer Julia Manchester. Welcome, Julia.
Thanks for having me, guys.
So what do you make of that non-answer from Karine Jean-Pierre? She's pretty good at deflecting a question, and it seems she didn't opt for that route in her response.
No, she didn't. And I think this is just yet another example of how this problem isn't going away for the White House or the Biden campaign. You know, we can talk about this question as to whether President Biden will step down from the Democratic ticket. But even if he stays on the ticket, and it appears that for now he certainly is, the White House is going to get these questions now through Election Day, and if Biden wins, they're going to continue to get those questions. So right now, I think you are seeing, behind the scenes, the White House Democrats really scramble how to handle this, because we're seeing that when a briefing room, oftentimes turns on a press secretary, you're going to see that tension erupt, and this is the last thing, obviously, the White House wants to be talking about right now. So I think you're seeing sort of this potential recalibration of a strategy from the Biden campaign and the White House. Will it work? We'll see.
Yeah, I think the press corps, senses blood in the water, essentially. I think many media reporters or political reporters, White House people, feel misled by this reality of Joe Biden's health situation. They're getting a lot of criticism from the right, but not just from the right for having missed this story or not having fully reported on it until it became so evident to everyone in the debate. So I think their angry, and they're venting that at Karine Jean-Pierre. And as you said, that's not going to go away anytime soon.
No, I mean, we're going to see this, and even if, like I said, even if Biden is elected, we're going to see this, continue, and that's a risk that this White House and the campaign is going to have to take. I mean, this is unprecedented, having someone who is 81 years old run for re-election, and if he wins and if he serves a full 4 years, he'll be 85, 86 by the time he leaves office. I mean, the American people have some major questions about that, and I think there's this feeling among the press corps and many voters, the White House simply has to be more transparent about the highest elected official in office in this country, in their health.
I think what everyone was expecting, from the Stephanopoulos interview to asking Karine Jean-Pierre why a Parkinson specialist was in the White House examining Biden, we're expecting reassurance, and it seems we're getting the opposite. And Biden's response has been that it's the elites in the party that want to push him out. This is something that struck me when I heard it. What do you make of that response to people getting more aggravated that what was told to them that's supposed to quell their discontent is actually making it worse?
Yeah, so two things there. First of all, it's a little ironic that the president is, hitting back at these so-called elites in the Democratic Party for trying to push him out, because many would argue that it was the elites that very much backed him in his primary against Bernie Sanders and, helped shore up that support during that primary in 2020. It's interesting, Robbie and I were talking off camera a few minutes ago, and he made a very good point that Joe Biden does not necessarily see himself as an elite. He sees himself as scrappy Scranton Joe Biden. But at the end of the day, that's how I think he's being viewed by many Americans. He is the establishment in the Democratic Party. And also, quickly, on that issue of reassurance, it's not only voters and the press who is looking for reassurance from the White House. We're seeing the first day of NATO take place in Washington, D.C. You have foreign leaders who have been watching this situation very, very closely, who will be meeting with Biden. They want reassurance as well.
So what about congressional Democrats? Has Biden staunched the bleeding? What is going on in Washington? Are there more defections expected? Do you know anything about the conversations taking place behind closed doors?
Yeah, so we actually have an interesting development this morning. New York Congressman Jerry Nadler, who just a few days ago came out against Biden, calling on him to step down from the ticket. As of this morning, he's saying that he supports the president and that the president is going to be their nominee. Now, whether that is, any sign of a shift within the conference, we'll have to see.
It's a reversal from him, though, right?
It's a reversal. It's a reversal, and Jerry Nadler is a major player, so that's something we should definitely keep an eye on. I think it's also notable that you have progressives like Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, as well as progressive conference chair Pramila Jayapal, who are coming, to back Biden, because we've seen Biden really go head-to-head with progressives over issues where there is a generational divide. So I think it's notable that you see progressives backing him. But at the same time, just on Monday, Congressman Adam Smith, top-ranking or high-ranking House Democrat, he came out in favor of Biden stepping down. So I think a lot of these House Democrats are watching this very, very closely and seeing, keeping their own political futures in mind as they tread carefully.
Do you see there's any possibility that now you have representatives and the Senate back at Capitol Hill, that we could see them start to flip-flop? Because I can imagine there's a phone call coming in from the White House to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's office about what's happening in 2024, and that they would really like to count on their support and continue working with the Progressive Caucus. But when you get a room of progressives together in the House and younger members of Congress, they may decide something different. So do you see more of this flip-flopping happening?
We saw it, and I wouldn't put Jerry Nadler, obviously, in that category of progressives, but, that is the latest example of flip-flopping. Look, it's very possible, because there's the political side of this, where you have Joe Biden, who is the head of the Democratic Party. He's pulling the strings and controlling a lot of this for, how much money, or he's the ultimate call for how much money these candidates, get in their reelection races.
Someone named Biden.
Someone named Biden.
It's Joe Biden, but
in that, that circle, Biden, whoever it is, that's the person who is, pulling those strings strings for a lot of these candidates. They're keeping that in mind. They're keeping their own political futures in mind. So if Biden does win again, they want to be on his good side. But also, look, if you're a member of Congress, you depend on the administration for grant funds and other means of support. So there is pressure here, and I think there is there could be potential consequences for constituents if the member, decides to go up against the president in this case.
Well, there's certainly a precedent for that happening on the Republican side. Countless Republicans turned on Trump both in 2016 after Access Hollywood and then again in 2020 after the events of January 6th. And Donald Trump, in both cases, maintained his iron grip, his total control over the Republican Party, and was able to punish dissenters. Before we let you go, Julia, I wanted to ask if you have any possible insights into the mindset of Kamala Harris. Obviously, publicly, she has said she's completely behind Joe Biden. He is the candidate. He should serve again. We know that she does want to be president someday.
Yeah.
Is she just kind of waiting in the wings and seeing how this plays out? Is there any chance she's engaged in maneuvers behind the scenes to make herself the candidate? Or would she really rather wait to do it properly in however long it takes, 4 years?
Like these other Democrats in the House and the Senate, Kamala Harris, probably even more so, is watching this very, very carefully and keeping her own future in mind. We've gotten no inclination that she is somehow, moving against the president. In fact, she's going to be in North Carolina this week, a major swing state, campaigning for President Biden. She's been very consistent in her messaging. But at the same time, I find it notable that you have members like Congressman Clyburn, who is saying he is behind Biden as the Democratic nominee, but saying in the case that Biden should step down, we need to rally around Kamala Harris. I think if you're Kamala Harris, there maybe is a sense of relief because we have heard more Democrats, even some Democrats who may have expressed skepticism about her behind closed doors. They've rallied around her as this, fallback in the scenario that Biden does step down.
Julia Manchester, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, guys.